Alright, now, with that out of the way, I thank you all for joining me, and for those of you that are new to my channel, I tend to do things a little bit differently. I try to pack as much information as I possibly can into every one of my videos, and this is going to be no different. Today I'm going to be sharing with you guys my favorite way of connecting an immense variety of different types of plugs, whether it's inshore, nearshore, surf casting, heavy swim bait kind of freshwater fishing, or even trolling for fresh and salt. I'm going to show you guys my favorite way of attaching lures to my leader. And I say leader because 99% of the time I'm fishing braid as a main line, and as such, I'll either tie in using an FG knot or an Alberto knot or a swivel, and the last thing I want to be doing throughout the course of the day is trimming back my leader, causing me to have to spend time retying. So the clips I find not only give me a quicker way to swap out plugs, but it also allows me to keep fishing longer without having to worry to retie a leader because it's been trimmed and shortened. And for those of you that might be thinking to yourselves, does this guy really expect me to watch a commercial for essentially a glorified paperclip? I encourage you guys, even if you're already familiar with your Backlash, your Breakaway, and the TA power clips, even if you're already familiar with them, hang out, because what I'm going to be doing is going over the test results that compare the three types of clips. I'm going to go over what lures work well, what lures you may need to do a little bit of prep work ahead of time, what lures work best with certain size clips, what lures will only work with certain size clips, a few simple tricks on how to transport them without losing them, and if you're into trolling deep diver style baits such as these or stretches, why this style clip is in many instances a better solution than either tying direct or using a coast lock or cross lock. Now, starting off with the results of a simple pull tool break style test, I want to make it perfectly clear, I don't really pay attention to any kind of pound test ratings on these style things. Any kind of clip, I don't care whose brand it is or what style, they're never accurate, and this is no different. So starting on the left hand side, you have the 125 pound test rated Tactical Angler Power Clip. It started to deform at around 95 pounds, and this was its final result where I kind of bottomed out my scale at 100. It deformed to the point where it wouldn't spring back anymore, which that's pretty darn good. Now this is where it kind of got interesting. This is a 75 pound test TA clip. This is the Breakaway Fast Link. There's really no strength rating on it. And this is the Backlash XL rated to 150 pounds. Now between those three, they all started to deform slightly at around 30 pounds. The 75 pound test rated TA clip deformed to the point where it wouldn't spring back at around 35 pounds. Same thing with the Breakaway clip. Now where these two clips both failed ranged between 60 and 63 pounds. I tested about 8 clips apiece, and they all kind of failed and started to look like this in between that 60 to 63 pounds. Now the 150 pound rated Backlash clip looked like this after 72 pounds. Now what I found interesting is the TA clip is physically smaller and lighter. It still has a little bit wider gap in here, so that way if you're throwing certain metals or certain plugs, you can actually get the clip on. And it ended up being the same strength as the Breakaway clip. And if you're anything like me, you're going to go with whatever is smaller, stronger, and lighter any day of the week. And over the past couple of years, I've found myself using this clip and the 125 clip the most. And I'm not saying I had any issues with the Breakaway clip. I used this one for years before these two came out. But I found that I liked the smaller size, and I liked the option for more strength, especially if I'm fishing in heavy current or rough surf. Now the Backlash clip, on the other hand, I've had many issues with this clip over the years. I'm surprised I even had any of these lying around. But what I found is, depending on what style bait you're using, if you look at how the wire is bent, it's designed to have a little gap on that backside down here. And for whatever reason, depending on, again, what bait I'm using and what style retrieve, I was finding that the bait could actually slide up under here and come off. I'm assuming it's because that gap. And over the years, out of all of these clips of this style, the only one I've ever had an issue with is that Backlash clip. And I know I'm not the only one. I've seen my friends lose plugs, and it's the same exact thing. They make a cast out, they're retrieving it, whether it's a minnow style bait or even a bucktail. Lo and behold, they come back in with just a clip. Not once, not twice, quite a few times. Enough that I said screw it. And it's gotten to the point that the only thing I use the Backlash Clip for is to transport the clips that I actually use around. So basically it's take the Backlash Clip, put it on a D-ring, and then clip however many clips that I actually do use in whatever size on it, so that way I never lose them. How's that for a segue, huh? And if you don't have access to like a rust-proof small diameter D-ring that can hold a carrier clip like this, just take yourself a length of heavy mono or leader material and go ahead and load it up. But make sure when you do tie it off to something that's always going to be with you and you're not going to lose. So if you have a D-ring on your plug bag or on your waders or in your belt, it's always best to secure it there, because the last thing you want to do is A, leave them at home, or B, lose your bulk supply of clips. So as long as it's secured good, you're not going to lose it. You're going to always have them with you, never forget them. Sound good? Moving along. Now I saved the dual lock snaps till last, and the reason being was I tested 15, 5 from 3 batches. Each batch was a different package rated break strength. And what I found was there was no consistency in which they failed. So if this clip here was rated at 65 pounds, I had clips hold to 30 or 35, and I had some clips that would fail at 10. I also had some of the lighter clips that were rated to 35 pounds, hold to like 28-ish, and you could see they would kind of turn into a pretzel, and this latch would hold on for dear life. But regardless of the inconsistency of the strength, the true downside is if the fish gets any leverage on that clasp at all, it's going to open. So if you're fishing a jig, if you're fishing a bucktail or a plug, that fish takes that bait deep. That fish's jaw is going to provide quite a bit of leverage from the side on the dual lock clip, and once that arm opens, it doesn't take any strength at all whatsoever to fold that clip open. Additionally, depending on the condition that you're fishing or where you're fishing or how you're fishing, the last thing you want to ever have to worry about is having to open up a clip and then close a clip. This also goes to guys that are trolling inshore and stuff like that. We're all guilty of it. We've all failed at one point or another to close a clip. And whether we paid the price by losing a fish or losing a plug, that's on you. I know I'm guilty of it. And that's another reason why the paperclip style snap is my favorite. They're smaller, they're stronger, and there's no room for fisherman error. Moving along, I want to touch briefly on a simple modification you should be making on any of your minnow style baits if you plan on fishing this style of clip. And all you need to do is take that nose ring and remove it. That's it. What happens if you try to attach this style of clip to a bait that has a split ring on it? And it doesn't matter if it's a 75-pound size or 125 or even larger or even smaller. What you'll find is when you try to get that clip on, A, you got to worry about getting that ring in the right position, and B, when you try to get it on there, can you see how that leg of the clip gets stuck in between the gap of the ring? You can pull on that all day and it's not going to go on. And if you look at this lure here, this is a all top seed mag darter. Goes right on. Easy peasy. And then back again on that split ring. Now what you'll also find, if you fish a clip on a split ring with a minnow style bait, regardless as to whether or not it's a Rapala X-Rap, a Crystal Minnow, an SP Minnow, or even a Bomber, or even if you're trolling baits like stretches or deep diving Yozuri Magnums or Rapala Magnums, if you end up clipping to that front split ring, you'll find that when you cast into current or any kind of wave action or just trolling in general, your baits aren't going to dig as they should, they're not going to track true, and they'll tend to burn out or roll out to one side. So that quick and simple modification will save you a ton of headaches, keep your baits running as they should, and as an added bonus, you'll be tying your leader to a clip, and the clip surface is pretty smooth and uniform versus tying off to a split ring. And you know what, there's never a good spot to tie on a ring. And not only that, you know, split rings do get scuffed up, dinged up, damaged, rusted, all that kind of stuff. And if you're tying off to that, you could damage the line. Now it's here going to go over what size clips you can use on specific sized baits. Should you or should you not use clips? Which baits can be a little bit stubborn, and what baits you really can use them on. So starting off with the darter family of baits, pretty much any bait on the right hand side you can get away with using either the 75-pound clip or the 125. If you look here, this is your basic mag darter. That is your 75-pound clip. And this is going to be your 125. So you can see the 75-pound clip kind of makes more sense. But again, you can fish the 125 all day on this plug. Here's another example of a darter. And I chose this one because the line tie is kind of cut a little flush. And as you can see, the 125 clip is a little hesitant on getting through, but it makes it. It works. But the 75-pound clip goes through a little bit easier. I believe this one's a Choopy. Moving right along, this is everybody's favorite. This is the Super Strike Zigzag, and depending on where you're at, some people call them whistlers. You can see that's the 75-pound clip. And you can see the 125. Both of these clips will work fine. And since a lot of people fish darters in heavy current, you may want to consider upping to a larger size to the 125, simply because you're going to be loading up that plug whenever you're fighting a fish. You're going to be fighting the current along with the fish. Now this is the new larger mag darter from Yozuri. That's the 75-pound clip, and this is the 125. And you can see, again, the 125 is much larger. You can use any clip you want on this plug. But once again, if you're fishing this in heavy current and you're fighting the current along with the fish, you might want to step up to the larger size. And this is the Tactical Angler Darter. And I clipped all three 75, 125, and 175 on just to give you an idea how they compare in size. And again, if you're fishing heavy current, go with the strongest you can get away with. And more often than not, the 125 is more than enough. Now I'm also going to include these kind of unique style baits into the whole darter family. You have a Megabass Cutter 90, and again, some of these baits have that similar Super Strike Zigzag kind of lazy side to side. Some of them kind of pivot more like this. But they have a similar design and a similar action to some of the darters out there, so I figure, you know what? I'll throw them in there. And this is also about as small as I would go and still use a TA style clip. And again, I always clip in freshwater as often as possible. I'll just move ahead and use a different style clip. This is an Evergreen spy bait. They're Prop Magic. This is a Jackal Sierra Minnow 80. Good luck finding this color in this size, ever, again. This is a Lucky Craft Wanderer. You may want to look into these baits, especially if the albacore are around. This bait casts like a stone, has a very unique action, and when it drops, it flutters super fast like this, side to side on a semi-slack line. Great bait. This is a Lucky Craft Stream Drive. Very unique little bait, very heavy for its size. I wouldn't use a TA clip on a bait this small. And this is another Japanese Lucky Craft. This is the Screw Drive. I would not use a TA clip again. This is a 50-pound clip. This is the smallest one they offer. To me, it's a little bit too large for the fish I'd be targeting throwing these lures. But 3.5-inch baits for bass and such, 50-pound clip is great. Next up, we have bottle darters, everybody's favorite. Now, this is a style of bait where you can use a 75 or 125-pound clip, no problem. They'll go on easy, but getting them off can be a little bit tricky. You kind of got to make sure you get in there, give it a twist to get that leg started, and then push it off. If you're new to a clip and you're new to this style plug, you're going to find that it could be a little bit tricky, but once you get the hang of it, getting the clips off is pretty easy. And this is a Gibbs bottle using the 75-pound clip. Now, I touched earlier on the minnow style plugs. I just want to point out the new SP minnow, and I'm singling out the SP minnow here because it's probably the most popular bait in the surf. The larger 17 size, they actually did away with the nose ring. So out of the box, it has the nose ring already removed because Daiwa was acknowledged 90% of the people use clips nowadays. This is the 75-pound clip. All right, moving right along, do metal lips work with clips? This is a 75-pound. This is the 125. They work perfectly. Here's another example. $75 and a 125. Figures, on Sudsy's plug, the clips got all crossed up. Damn you! And another popular family of baits, pencil poppers. Here we have an After Hours. That's the 125. Here's another style from After Hours on the 125-pound clip. Here's a canal style pencil. And this is a more traditional pencil popper style. Now, generally speaking, I will use a 125-pound clip because if I'm throwing pencils, chances are there are large fish around. And if I'm throwing a pencil, I may be near some structure, and I'm probably going to be putting a lot of pressure on those fish to control them around the structure. So I'll lean towards the 125 clip, although the 75 can be used. Now, moving along to freshwater swim baits. I'm going to single out this live target bait real quick. This is a relatively new bait. I think it came out earlier in the year. And I found that if I tie direct and I retrieve the bait with any kind of speed whatsoever beyond suicide slow, it will lean to one side and it'll cause it to kind of lean up and plane to the surface. But I found if I clip up, it'll stay running truer. So this is a style bait that will actually run truer and better if you use a clip instead of tying direct. And that doesn't necessarily apply to this style bait, which is essentially the same thing. It's a saltwater tsunami, but generally speaking, they're so heavy you don't really have to worry about it kind of keeling out to one side. Whereas some of the freshwater baits, they have different sink rates and they'll fall at about a foot a second or so. Same thing goes to the smaller version. And this is the wildly popular Jackal Gantarelle, and I have both the 50 and 75-pound clip on here. And you can see they're fairly close in size. And even though it has that small ring in the embedded swivel, I would lean towards the 75-pound clip on this bait. The reason being is it kind of grabs that thin wire ring a little bit better. This is your Spro Rat. Now this one had a factory installed ring, and you always have to be careful when you pull off that ring on certain baits, because sometimes it could be a pain in the butt to get a ring back on, and you may not be able to use a clip. And in this instance, you have to put the clip on a little bit differently. So instead of going in from the back side, you really do have to go in from the front. But it goes on cleanly. This is a Duo Realis Onimasu, no brainer, 75-pound clip. Now this is, I believe, the Jackal Swimming Ninja. Very interesting style bait, and another one of those baits that are similar to this, where if you retrieve them too fast, they'll lean out, they'll burn out. 50-pound clip, bingo. Now this is a marling bait, and it has an action similar to a subsurface spook. And what's unique about it is it has a twisted wire line tie, and you're definitely going to have to use some sort of clip. You never want to tie direct to that kind of line tie. And you have the 75-pound or 125. Either one will work perfectly fine. Now when it comes to poppers, one thing you need to watch out for. Some line ties are recessed deep in that cupped face, which will make getting the clip on fairly easy, but getting the clip off near impossible. This is a Super Strike Little Neck popper. In my opinion, one of the best poppers ever made. This is their sinking version. That'll actually have an exaggerated swimming action on a steady retrieve. Cast a mile, great bait. Does not have that issue with the line tie recessed too far. And one thing I may have forgotten to mention, if bluefish are around, I may go to the largest clip available. This is the 175. The reason being, it's bite protection. Whenever those yellow-eyed demons come out, I don't like throwing wire. I'll just plug using 80-pound or 100-pound mono. With that extra length of the clip, it actually acts as a wire leader or some bite protection. Something you may want to consider, and that's the 125 and the 175. And one last thing I want to go over real quick before we discuss metals and tins. Trolling baits. So if you're trolling Yozuri Magnums, Rapala Magnums, or Deep Diver Stretches, or even Mojos, I like using the Tactical Angler 175. I actually prefer it over like a Coast Lock Snap. For whatever reason, I find that they track truer, they run straighter, and they tend not to want to lean out to the side as much as if I used like a Coast Lock Snap. And if you're trolling stretches or Rapalas that have that split ring on the nose, make sure you pull that ring off and clip direct. And finally, we'll leave off on metals, tins, squids, teasers, bucktails, jigs, epoxy jigs, anything of this sort. Starting off with the point jewed butterfish, this bait is wildly popular, and over the years they've changed the design. Instead of having that recessed or sunken in line tie, they now have a more traditional eyelet, and that makes clipping much easier, so you really don't have to worry about what size clip you use with this bait. They've done that with a few of their baits over the years. This just happens to be an old one. Now moving along to the Castmaster XL or Deadly Dick style baits. These baits are unique because generally they come with a split ring and a barrel swivel already installed. What I like to do with the Castmaster XLs is pull off that ring and go direct with a 75-pound TA clip. And you can see there's no binding, nothing hindering its action. It's not going to get stuck and start spinning. And we all know that false albacore have some crazy good vision, and less hardware is always best, so being able to clip direct is nice. Epoxy jigs, no brainer. Depending on what you're targeting and how heavy the current you're fishing is, I'll go with the 75 or 125 pound clip. Bucktails. Well, I'm not a bucktail aficionado. I know many guys are, so if you like tying direct or tying a loop knot and not using a clip, that's up to you. I tend to like using a light clip with the 75 pound. I'm not a canal guy, so I'm not throwing those big 6-ounce bucktails in heavy current, so whatever you choose to do up there is up to you. I happen to like the convenience of being able to switch out from like an SP Minnow or a Mag Darter to a bucktail. If you like that bucktail swinging freely, the 75-pound TA clip is a good choice. It's a thin enough wire diameter where it doesn't bind at all. Sometimes if you go heavier, the diameter of the eyelet won't facilitate a free swinging bucktail, if that's what you want. Tatey and Crocodile style spoons. These are the big ones. They have a welded ring. Generally speaking, if I'm throwing these big crocodiles or big taties, I'm probably either chasing big fish or in heavy current, so I'll go with either the 125 or 175. Also, bluefish might be in the area, so the larger 175 will provide a little bit better bite protection. Alright, so now you have your squids and tins, your T-Hex, your Hopkins style and Castmaster style metals. And one thing I like about the T-Hex, they come factory installed with a ring. What I like to do is pull off that ring and clip direct. And the one thing you have to watch out for, if the clip doesn't have enough clearance below that little angled arm, it'll get stuck in the corners. The TA 125 clip has perfect clearance. It's not going to bind up at all, so that way it'll flutter as it should. In terms of your tins and squids that have these recessed line ties, same thing goes for your Hopkins and your Castmasters. Go and buy the largest rings you can find. Well, maybe not the largest rings, but these are about a 1/2 inch diameter. That way you can get that ring on there without it deforming. If the ring does deform, you want to take a pair of pliers and kind of wrap that deformed leg around, and it should pop back cleanly. And it's at that point you can take your 125-pound clip and clip over the ring. Again, you're going to be dealing with that leg of the clip hitting that gap in the ring, but it's better than nothing. Teasers. For me personally, I like using a small clip like this when attaching a teaser. That way, if I'm only using like a 6-inch leader, I'll just clip on, and if they get chewed up, frayed up, shredded, or straightened out hooks, I could just clip on a new teaser. Alright, so that about covers it. And wow, that was a long video about essentially a glorified paperclip. So to those of you that are still here and stuck it out this long, I greatly appreciate the time you guys have spent here. The last thing I ever want to do is waste your time, so I try to pack as much information in all my videos as I possibly can. And without you guys, I wouldn't be here. So if you found this informative or you enjoy this kind of stuff, definitely hit that like button and subscribe. Check out the other videos I have on my channel, whether they be in-depth detailed, not tutorials, or simultaneous real teardowns. And again, we're all on the same team, and I'm just trying to pass along to you all the information that I've picked up over the years in hopes of making you guys better, more efficient fishermen. So once again, guys, thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you soon.